Just a little over a year ago, Raith Rovers travelled along the M8 for an opening day encounter to face Airdrie, and it's safe to say the lay of the land has changed a little. But once again, we are back for the opening day of everyone's favourite league. It's a league which gave you forwards and drug busts, heated seats, chandeliers, global banking outages localised in an ML postcode, abandoned Kenyan flags, Jonathan Sutherland not knowing the score, 2 transfer embargoes, Lanzarote John, documentaries, tranches, and of course, cartoons please admin. We're going to chuck in the Mallard, the cold embrace of the North Sea wind, and St Johnstone, whatever they offer. And as ever, the Scottish Championship is back. We are beginning our first preview of the season. This, of course, is the Oh No 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 podcast. Thank you for tearing yourself away from the 10-hour-long season preview that the Terrace have done, or any of our local podcasts like Spiders Talk for Queen's Park. I'm your host this evening, Robbie Weir, and looking ahead to Saturday's curtain raiser against the Spiders, Queen's Park, I'm joined firstly by Scott Fleming. How are you getting on, Scott?
Really good, mate. It's this sort of time in the season that you can be allowed to be as optimistic as possible, really, because if you're not going to be optimistic now, then you might as well just can the season, because I don't know when else you're going to be unless you're in a title race with like a few weeks to go. So, no, looking forward to another roller coaster season as it keeps getting named. So, I'm sure we'll have a right few laughs and also a right few raging moments during the season.
Right, you in particular. Come on. And of course, we've got Blair Hopcross joining us. How are you getting on, Blair?
Very well, mate. I was going to say, is the lack of optimism, do they not just go to Pie and Bovril? I don't actually.
They do.
I try and avoid the place like the plague.
You get caught collateral damage, basically, with the rest of us chatting about it in the group, basically. You're like, what the hell is going on here? It's obviously back for the new season. The League Cup's out the way. Bit of housekeeping just before we begin. Couple of points that got flagged up to our group. The Raith Trust are doing a promo event. Carol's quite heavily involved in the Raith Trust show. She was saying that prior to the game against Queen's Park, they're going to be doing a bit of a drive in terms of reaching out and basically highlighting the work that they do. We have, of course, previously, Duncan's sat down to do a podcast with Alan Russell, who will be out and about, of course, on Saturday. If you do want more information about the Trust, just go and ask them. Basically, they will be there to give you information and tell you all about what they do. Or if you're on the move, we do also have another podcast, which I'll put in the show notes. And as well, I'll probably try and put a link in here, one of those YouTube boxes that pops up with the graphic, and see if I can work my tech quiz. That'd be a first for this podcast. 2 years, and
I was going to say
that. And then 31st of August as well, a group including Allan and Graeme, who are on the podcast, they're going to be running the Kirkcaldy Half Marathon in aid of helping out for the Community Foundation. So I'll also put in a link for them in terms of the fundraising that they're doing. I believe that it's to help in terms of kids getting season tickets, potentially that might need them for the new season, giving them an opportunity to get along to Starks Park. So there will be a lot more details. Yeah, fully agree. So we'll start off the rumour mill flying about cooperation agreements. There's been a lot of chat about this now. You've sort of seen a few links with, I believe it's usually Rangers related sort of articles, bits in the press coming out to say that it's done, and that I'd noticed myself a few people asking about sort of referencing the Rory Kilgour interview, and sort of the supporters liaison officer Smithy on Twitter saying there's going to be a fan consultation. Naturally, quite a lot of people have came out and said, well, what's going on? What's the script with this? We thought that we were meant to be hearing about it. I went out my way to message and hassle Rory earlier on today. He got back to me and he just said that talks are still ongoing. There's nothing finalised at the moment. So you might be reading your Scott Burns pieces and sort of saying to yourself, when they said they were going to be getting on to the fans and asking the question about it, Rudy was very, very assertive that, he effectively raised the point, how can you consult on something when it's not been finalised and it might not go ahead yet? Which I think is a really good point to make, and people need to consider that. So there's nothing that's been done yet as to that.
It's so funny. Like, How could, like, why are we not being consulted on something that's not been finalised? Like,
it's just, it would go against everything that this board have done so far.
Totally.
Based it again, I've had sort of a few interactions. I've known Ray for years, so I'm quite comfortable in terms of talk about him. But yeah, just certainly in terms of the communication that they've put out and the sort of information that you get from the likes of supporters liaison officers, it would have been a complete U-turn if we just got a big headline banner coming through on Twitter saying cooperation agreement is done. We didn't bother consulting with the fans. We didn't have enough time. No, it feels very much the opposite. He was also very keen to reiterate the point that we're not skint. He said that we do still have budget to use, because he'd noticed that there's been a few comments about people sort of saying, they've not got any money left, they've used all their money. He was just saying that there is money to use, it's just waiting for the right player. Scott, what do you make of that in terms of the attitude taken there? Do you think it's quite important that sometimes, again, as supporters, we can all be guilty of jumping to conclusions, or 2 + 2 comes to 5. Do you think it's just important to have a bit that sort of perspective? And what do you think as well in terms of having that dynamic where we can sort of go to the board and ask these questions and get that sort of response?
Yeah, I mean, for in terms of the fans anyway, I think guys like Rory are pretty approachable, whether it be around the ground if you see them, or even online, like you say, if you speak to him or whatever. I've had the occasional message with him now and again as well, just in regards to loads of stuff about the Rovers and whatever. But and he's happy to be pretty open about it, to be honest. And it's something actually that we as fans probably but want at times. Just the fact that it's a fan on the board basically, and it's a fan that's helping at the top end of the club, and you know that he's going to always be trying to put his best foot forward in terms of helping move the club forward. So, but in terms of the whole cooperation agreement, I know that we had that big spiel for Duncan not that long ago about how he wasn't a fan of it.
Was he not a fan of it? I thought he was all for it.
Well, whilst I get his point, and I'm not a massive fan of being whole linked with Rangers and all that sort of stuff. At the end of the day, they're likely, I'm not saying they do, but they're likely to have the second best youth prospects in the country. Now, Ayr have now went and linked up with Celtic. If they go and start, they've already went and got, I think, is it Jude Bonner and somebody Ure that they've went and picked up this week. So, and already they're kind of raving about the boy Bonner in the middle of the park, saying that he's really settled in quickly and looking quite good. So, if I know that the first name that's been mentioned is obviously the guy in the article, Josh Gentle. But I think that seems to be moving even before the whole cooperation agreement. So that could even be a loan move without even being linked with them. So these sort of players, I think you're probably wanting to link up with them more than you would with just say, I don't know, like a Dundee United or something. Because no offence to Dundee United, they're probably not going to have quite as high a quality of player in the youth team as Rangers. But again, I totally understand why fans are against it as well. So I'm pretty 50-50 with, as I say, just the fact that I don't necessarily on paper want to be a feeder club for Rangers or be linked with them in terms of that. But I also understand why the club are looking into, or even like say John Potter and Barry Robson are even just open to the fact that let's see what they've got in their academy that could potentially. I don't even think that necessarily they'll come and just start for us. It could be just fill up the bench and bulk up the squad a little bit, because at the end of the day, we've already got, like, no offence to them, young lads like Callum Hanna and the boy Rayside as well on the bench who I didn't think they're ready for championship football. So if we can get youth guys that are probably closer to championship standard, then it's only going to be a bonus for us. I do, however, last point of it is find it slightly, I think I put it into the group chat yesterday, hypocritical of Rangers to come to the Rovers and give us potentially 3-4 youth players when we've got a plastic pitch and they're desperate to ban all these plastic pitches in the leagues. or in the top flight.
Scott, you're going to get us all banned from Starks Park if you KO this plan. And Rudy's sitting there like, why did you say that? Why did you say it?
I just find it hypocritical of them, considering that they're so desperate to get rid of these pitches that they claim that all these injuries are coming from. Well, if that's the case, why are you sending all your potentially sending youth prospects to us that are going to be playing on that every second week?
Russell Martin talking to Lucy Pinder saying, yeah, I was going to have to go through Kirkcaldy, but they've changed it now. I'm off to Greenock. And that's it. But Blair, do you think...
They're agreeing with me, by the way.
But Blair, I'm probably in the camp. I know that you were obviously on the episode with myself and Duncan where we initially discussed it. Do you think people's attitudes have maybe softened a bit given the sort of circumstances around the club? I know that Rudy's obviously mentioned that there is still money to bring in players, but do you think people have maybe looked at the League Cup campaign and just sort of thought a bit like, actually, given the lay of the land, this might be something that we can utilise to potentially benefit from, effectively?
I don't know how much it's softened, to be fair. I've seen a few comments already about I might not be coming if, and particularly in talking about things like the away games and stuff in the bus chat about that's all dependent on whether we end up with a co-op agreement and that kind of thing, which is absolutely fine if folk feel that strongly about it. I'd like to think that if the board put forward a case, so to kind of go back a wee bit, we were talking about the history of the board, and it would be unlike them to just go ahead and do something like this without speaking to the fans. And Rudy's basically said that they would consult with the fans once it had been kind of finalised and the details were in place. I do kind of think that they probably need a little bit more, I don't know if respect's the right word, but credit, certainly. Like, they've done a lot of good things, and I feel like it's not just Rudy that's on the board that's a Rovers fan. You've got Willie McGregor in there as well, who's ploughed money into this club for years as a drinker, as much as anything else, to be fair. But I just think it's kind of got to the stage where if they come forward and they have one of those interviews with Davey or whatever, and they put forward the case of why this is a good thing for us, or if Barry Robson comes out and says, this is why I think it's a good thing. Somebody from the club basically puts forward the argument for it. And they go to the fans, and the fans vote for it. Then I would hope that the fans who were dead against it would at least go, well, I'm in the minority, like the majority of fans that are voting want this to happen, and therefore, let's go for it. Steamroll ahead. I'm not sure it will. If I'm honest, I'm not sure it will go like that. I'd like to think it will, but I mean, I'll be honest, I just don't feel strongly one way or the other. I don't care if it's Rangers. I don't care if it's Celtic. I don't care if it's Dundee United. I'm kind of glad that we're not in the position where we're getting offered St Mirren and Livingston. Like, it's quite a nice place to be when the second best club or the second biggest club, arguably the second biggest club in Scotland, are basically wanting to have a cooperation agreement with us, because certainly from what we're led to believe, they made the initial contact. So that's got to be a ringing endorsement to something that we're doing. If we end up with 2 or 3 players out of it that pad the bench, or you end up with a Ryan Hardy in there that hits the ground running and does great, I don't understand why anybody would be against it. Like, we've signed players from Rangers on loan before. We've signed players from Celtic on loan before. We've had players for St Mirren and Dundee United and everywhere else on loan. The fact that there's this agreement, I don't see anything changing. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, it's a maximum of 3 players.
Yeah.
And they have to be eligible for Scotland. So that narrows down the pool a little bit at Rangers already. I think Josh Gentles does qualify. I know he's Wales youth capped, but I think he is still eligible for Scotland, because I think under it's that thing about being schooled in the country and stuff. So I think anyway he's still eligible.
Right.
But I mean, if we were just signing Josh Gentles on loan, who's handing back their season ticket?
Yeah,
I don't understand what the problem is.
This week that even that could happen without even this agreement anyway. So
yeah.
And I'm like, well, what do we have to lose? They're not going to come in and pilfer our... This idea that we're a feeder club, they have no right to come in and pilfer Dylan Easton because they fancy him in their European squad. Like, it doesn't work like that. It's the opportunity to basically pick up somebody young, and granted, it gives the club a bit of power in terms of they can recall them, but that just might mean you get a slightly better calibre of player coming out.
Yeah.
And they go, don't think we'll need them, but there's a chance we'll call him back. Whereas before, they'd be like... I mean, we're in the position now. You look at boys on our bench that Gibson, for example, probably could do with going out and getting a bit of experience or whatever. Couldn't possibly put him on loan out at the moment. We've not got enough bodies to cover the games that we've got ahead of us, so we can't possibly put him out on loan. Rangers aren't in that position, but there will definitely be players that they think, we'll hold on to them just in case we might need them or whatever. I don't know. I didn't see a downside to it personally.
The only little thing I would add, and Blair actually brings up a good point with Lewis Gibson, him and Montague, I think, are the two that either... that this is going to be a big season for both of them, because this is kind of almost not quite make or break in the full-time sort of game yet, but it's just going to be a big season to see how much they can progress.
Definitely.
I want them to be playing football, whether it's with us or whether it's out on loan, because they've both got talent and they've both shown it that they can play at championship level on their day. So I think we're going to have to make the call at some point in the next month, where are they going to be coming off the bench regular enough, or are they not, and we need to send them out on loan. So I think it is a big point with them two especially. The only thing I would then caveat that with is, if we do make an agreement or we do sign anybody for the SPL sort of sides in terms of loans, I would far rather be playing Kai Montague and Lewis Gibson ahead of just making their players better, if you get what I mean.
But if it's a case of padding your bench, and we all know Barry Robson's reluctance to make wholesale changes to his team. So if you've got players like Kai Montague, who's basically feeding off scraps and is going to be playing bits and pieces here and there, and you can replace him with a 19-year-old for Rangers, 20-year-old for Rangers, same age as Kai Montague, who can come in, who's arguably of a similar standard, and we're no bothered about sitting him on the bench and playing for scraps. It's absolutely fine. Whilst Kai Montague goes on loan to Montrose or East Fife or wherever and is playing week in, week out. I don't know. I've seen a few things about us loaning somebody to loan them out and how that's a bad thing. I think it depends on what you're planning on doing with them.
Yeah,
personally.
I mean, I would, in all honesty, I'd be quite happy if we ended up doing a cooperation agreement of our own with a team lower down the pyramid in terms of a chain, and sort of having that relationship, because then we could pull players back as well and be able to utilise the system for our benefit. For me, where I'm sitting at, you have the initial outrage of a bit like, right, this is terrible for our clubs. And I get Duncan's perspective of where we're at. But also, I did mention it at the time that you do kind of need to be quick on your feet with this, because otherwise there's every chance that you're getting left behind. And while you're sitting there having a big discussion and raging about this, that and the other, and we're Rangers B, and the whole sideshow that comes with them and the things that you don't like about that club. Meanwhile, it might be a club like Morton or a Partick Thistle that are out there breaking a deal with them, and Ayr have got their agreement seemingly. I don't think it's been confirmed yet, but it's basically that they've got their agreement with Celtic lined up. That was initially Celtic were looking at Queen's Park. They've changed it to go with Ayr, and they're going to be getting those players in. And ultimately, they've not had the same backlash. Nobody's sitting there saying, we're expecting full balaclavas down at Somerset Park and IRA paraphernalia, I was saying on Pine Bovril. It's just one where I feel like if we can be quick on our feet and see how it goes and utilise it, I would hope that Rangers might want to utilise this, and the agreement will develop over time. So you would hope that they would send out better players first. Now, whether they would go to the extremes of sending the likes of Finlay Curtis, who's started against Panathinaikos tonight, and Bailey Rice, I mean, that's a completely different question. But, I mean, if John Potter and Barry Robson are keen for it, and they're sort of pushing for it, and I'm sure they'll state their case, and that'll probably get relayed down to the fans in any consultation, then I would like to hope that fans would be able to see past that if those two guys are sitting there saying, look, this is going to make our squad stronger, this is going to add a bit of depth. You look at the track record of players that have been brought through, even as terms of youth players from Rangers before. Like, I mean, sure, they weren't all world beaters. They didn't go on to have the career of Ryan Hardy, but there's a good number of stable championship players in there. And I've probably been quite dismissive before in the past about Rangers and their youth setup. But you've got to work with you can only piss with the cock that you've got, basically, is the best way of putting it. So, yeah, it's just about using what's there. And if we can utilise that, then a steady stream.
Just was not expecting that, Robbie.
That's all right. Anyway, Josh Gentles, you've mentioned him, Scott. What are your thoughts about that rumour? Obviously, Wales capped in terms of youth level, 17, potentially coming in from Rangers. He was on loan at Alloa last season, made 14 appearances, scored 3 goals. I did ask, going back to Pine Bovril again, one of the sort of fans there, the Alloa fans, what to expect from him. If he does come in, sort of said he's tricky, fairly strong with an eye for a goal. He's actually on the bench against Panathinaikos as well tonight. What do you make about that in terms of that potential there for him to come in and bolster a front line that's already sort of pretty bare bones?
Yeah, I think it's one that for us, we do need to probably go and bring in some sort of forward, and it probably actually needs to be a guy that's got a bit of pace, because Vaughan's kind of losing his pace these days. I know that obviously Callum Smith, once he's back's got pace, but at the end of the day, when's he going to be back? Maybe end of August, start of September. But even then, he's going to have probably a good 3 to 4 weeks of full training until he's probably up to speed. So you're talking October, actually, till he's probably back to his best. So I think we probably could do with somebody like that can... And from what I've read on little bits on Twitter and stuff, his time at Alloa, I think they were encouraged with what he's shown in that sort of loan spell, but at the same time, he wasn't like a world beater at League One or anything like that. So I don't. And with these young players, I mean, he's not even 18 yet. They're going to have games where they're really good, and they're going to have games where they're probably anonymous, because that's just what you get with all these young players. So I don't know. I'm not like desperate for us to go out and sign him, but at the end of the day, I'm also open to going, well, let's have a look at him. I know that people go, well, great, he's on the bench for a Champions League game tonight. That'll be purely for a quota for homegrown players. That's the only reason he'll be there. The only one or two that will be there on sort of merit is Finlay Curtis, because he's been playing, and the boy Rice, because he's also played games for the first team. So I think he's clearly involved in the sort of first team squad of training at Rangers, so I'm sure Russell Martin and all these guys will be having a look at him to see if he's potentially good enough to be in and around the first team squad. But if not, they'll be desperate to send him out on loan. They clearly want to get him to a championship club this season, by the looks of it, whether it's just to get that step up. But as I say, like it wasn't like he was one of the guys at Alloa from the other year. Like, I mean, you had
Bobby Wales
and Taylor Stephen, who were there at the same time at Alloa, and they both were brilliant for Alloa. I don't think he was quite as good as they two were in that stint, but I do think he clearly has some sort of talent, and that he could potentially do a job for us. But at the same time, I don't expect him to come in and just start all of a sudden, because I don't think he'll be any better than what we've got currently.
Yeah, I think it's good to have that expectation, and it's fair. Yeah, as you say, Blair, it's you wouldn't want to pile all that pressure on. I mean, we've had Ryan Hardy, as you say, come in before, and he was similar age, and he put in some really, really impressive performances. And I don't think anyone was particularly shocked to see him go on and have the career that he's had. Outside of that, Blair, still quiet on the Darragh O'Connor front. We've not had any update for that.
Yeah.
You just sort of waiting to see where the lay of the land is with that one, and I'm sure we'll hear from the club in time if it's going forward.
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, it kind of makes sense, doesn't it? We're almost certainly got to be looking at another centre half. So yeah, I suppose we've just got to bide our time and wait. Like, it's it's a funny time of year as well, because a lot of the top flight teams and the certainly the teams at the upper end of the championship and stuff are now basically going to have their pretty much their settled squads, and there'll be an idea of who's surplus effectively. So you'll start to get the loan market starting to move once the kind of season's kicked off, probably after the window closes. So you're probably looking at another 4 weeks or so before that moves. I would imagine we're going to bring in one or two anyway on loan, whether it's for Rangers or for elsewhere. We're going to be looking to bring in at least one or two, I would think. I can't imagine there'll be many more permanent signings at this point, because you're kind of looking at boys without clubs. You're looking at boys who've no got pre-seasons in them and stuff.
Yeah.
Although I think he is with a club at the moment, isn't he? So there must be, is it York?
Yeah, I think the understanding is that he's still under contract at York, so that might be where the sort of delay's been, that they're
some kind of fee involved, maybe.
Yeah, maybe hoping for a fee, or whether they're just trying to reach an agreement. But again, it's one of his fans. You're never going to know the sort of minutiae on it and just how the fine details are. So
look, I think as long as we can keep boys fit, which is always a massive if, but if we can keep boys fit, I don't think we're in a bad place at all. I think we're looking all right. We could probably do one or two more in, just in terms of giving options. But what's the point in having an option if the manager's not going to use them? So I don't know. I don't know how much more we need to bring in, to be fair. I do kind of worry a little bit that the idea of running a smaller squad, I think, makes sense for us, because there is a limited budget. I mean, I know we're not necessarily saying we're skint, but there is a limited budget. So it's how you spend that budget. Do you know what I mean? We could go out and get 26 players, but the calibre of those players is going to have to be a lot less to spend the money that we've got effectively. So running a smaller squad kind of makes sense. My worry is that, personally, I think with a smaller squad, you've got to rotate more. You've got to keep everybody fit, because you're going to need everybody. You can't let anybody kind of languish on the bench and lose their fitness, kind of thing. But I mean, I'm relatively optimistic about where we are at the moment. I think we're in I feel much the same, if not better, than I did going into last season. The difference going into last season is I wasn't sure where goals were going to come from, and I kind of feel like that's not necessarily the case at the moment.
Yeah,
I feel like we're a wee bit more kind of fluent up front, and I think defensively we have been better. I know that the League Cup campaign hasn't necessarily been fantastic on that front, but the final 11 games of the season or whatever kind of showed what we can do defensively if we absolutely need to. So yeah, I'm relatively okay with the squad as is.
Yeah, I'm in a similar position to you. I'm looking ahead to the season, relatively optimistic. I mean, before last season, I was also optimistic, to be fair, but
yeah,
it's a very valid point to make, that I think the way that we started the last campaign felt almost like a hangover to the season before, which is completely understandable. And I think people had big expectations, and then you go in and it's not quite, and then the first quarter really killed the mood, and then we went from there after Christmas, basically. Let's look ahead to Saturday's game, though. Queen's Park come to town. A bit of early summer gloom for them. So to fill you in, if you've not reached that, don't know, probably about 3 hours into the Terrace's big lower league preview, an absolute colossal effort from Sean and Craig Telfer, you've got to say. We sit there after about, we'll get an hour and a half in, and we're like, oh, right, we'll probably need to call it there. But to do 10 hours over a full day, I get they'll split up, as they say, but just remarkable, man. Some early summer gloom for Queen's Park. It was initially revealed that I think last year they'd spent over £5 million, which needed cut down to £1 million. And Sean Crichton has taken over the reins. What did you make about that, Scott? The move to appoint a sort of new manager. This is going to be his first role. Do you think that's a bit of a bold choice given their circumstances?
I mean, well, it is a bold move, but I mean, every managerial appointment is a big risk, as we noticed last year for a start. But no matter what sort of level of manager you go and get, but I think it seems to be the way that just Queen's Park have operated, especially in the last sort of, actually since they've went as like a sort of full-time club and gone away from the amateur status. They've gone with that young sort of coach or somebody that's going to bring in fresh ideas. They obviously tried the experiment with the Dutch lads coming over, and that eventually didn't work because they were going to play total football and change Scottish football instantly. But then obviously they've brought in. Well, they then actually then went and hired what I thought was a very shrewd appointment at the time in getting Callum Davidson, who probably felt harshly done by at St Johnstone after getting them a cup double. And then for some reason he was sacked last season when they maybe weren't sitting in the position they necessarily would want to be in, but I don't think they were really in that much trouble at the time. I think everybody was a wee bit surprised with the sacking at the time, but then as you say, they've now announced Sean Crichton. From what I've from that lower league preview thing that you've just talked about with the terrace, it does sound like Sean Crichton's pretty optimistic and saying the right things about his squad and about the situation and trying to get the fans back on side, because I know it's something that the Queen's Park fans have been quite vocal on in recent seasons anyway. It's just the situation off the field and that they feel like the club aren't listening to them and that that the whole like banning drums for the stadium and now having to go into Lesser Hamden, and Lesser Hamden is nowhere near up to standard of what they wanted and also what is needed in the Championship as well. So, I mean, off the park, they're a bit of shambles now. They're not quite as bad as some clubs in Scotland right now, but they are a bit of shambles. I think on the field, they've actually had a much better summer than I think I was expecting and a lot of people were expecting. I mean, straight away they went and got Ewan Murray and Aidan Connolly for us. And that's for Championship sides. That's two very solid signings and two guys that you would say that aren't necessarily a big risk to take on, because they're two guys that are known to the division and two guys that have done well in the division. So I think, and they've also went and got guys like Michael Ruth, who's came for Dumbarton as well, who's also quite well known in terms of the lower leagues and done well. So I think they're actually done a bit better in the summer than I was expecting. But yeah, Sean Crichton's going to have a big job on his hands, and it's whether he can take on that sort of burden going forward. But I'm a wee bit. I mean, at the end of the day, we still will need to do the business on Saturday anyway. But I do think that they're going to be slightly better than I think a lot of people were expecting coming into the season, maybe about a month ago.
Yeah, I'll look at Nere's toe poker before we were coming on here. 16 departures in terms of full-time players that they've had in the summer, including the likes of Zach Rudden, Will Tizard, Jack Turner, I think Jack Thompson as well, he's with Kelly, Cammy Kerr, who I know that he spent a lot of time injured, and Sean Welsh as well. But then also they've still managed to retain the likes of Charlie Fox, Louis Longridge, Roddy McGregor, Seb Drosden is probably the most important sort of talismanic figure, Callum Ferry. He'd attracted interest, I think, from Coleraine. Obviously, the window's still open, so there might be a development. And I don't think he played the last League Cup game. I might be wrong about that. I did actually need to go and check that. I'll just do that now. But Blair, are you quite surprised that they've managed to retain that sort of core of players, given the circumstances? Sort of what Sean said, or what Scott said.
I mean, Sean and Scott, we kind of get they two right. I mean, I don't know how many of them were already under contract, because that seems to be another change that's happened in the last sort of 3 or 4 years, especially in the Championship, is they're dishing out 2 and 3 year deals like they're sweeties. So how many of they boys were actually still under contract, I'm not really sure. They have got some decent players. They've got probably a bigger problem than us in terms of the squad, though, in the sense that I don't think there's an awful lot of depth there. Like, it seems to drop off quite quickly. 3 or 4 injuries, and they could be in a bit of bother in terms of playing a lot. They've got a lot of young boys, which is kind of part and parcel of what Queen's Park have always done. But I don't know. Like it's the squad's a funny one. I mean, it will not surprise anybody listening to know that Ewan Murray went off at the weekend, having taken one right in the coupon after about 50 minutes or so. So whether he's even fit for Saturday, I'm not sure. I don't think they've got an awful lot of, particularly at the back. I don't think they've got an awful lot of depth. But yeah, some really good players in there, but a lot of quite injury prone players. I mean, Savoury's the perfect example. He's great at this level, but he's never fit. Do you know what I mean?
Played a game in
Can't
2
keep him
years.
fit.
Literally in
No,
2 years.
and there's no doubt in his quality. Absolutely no doubt in his quality. And it's, I mean, anybody listening would be like, we've got Lewis Vaughan, and it's much the same thing. You're absolutely right, it is. But it's whether or not they can keep the guys fit long enough to kind of make an impact. I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's one of the stranger decisions I think that I'd seen that Sean Crichton had done recently. I think he'd been playing Louis Longridge as a holding midfielder, sort of like an anchor.
He's played
man.
everywhere, and he was playing right back last year.
So I don't. That's what I picked up. I was listening to the Spiders talk their podcast to sort of see what they were saying prior to the game, and I believe that's what was mentioned. They have got a few new bodies in. The one that's probably caught the eye the most, though, Blair, is Josh Fowler, who's came in. I think he's over in Dubai. What have you made about his return? Quite a surprise. Could be potentially one of those sort of dark horses in terms of that comes over out of nowhere and then goes on, puts 20 goals in for the season.
I had a wee watch of their highlights, and he looked all right. I've got to say, he's quick. He's kind of tricky. He's scored a lot of goals in the past. I mean, I know, granted, was it West of Scotland League? I think it was it Beath or somebody he was at?
Yeah.
But he'd scored a ridiculous number of goals. It was like 50 or 60 goals or something he'd scored for them. And then he got picked up by somebody in Dubai or wherever, and is obviously back and now playing in the SPFL. But I don't know, like, the Championship's a funny league in the sense that there's like boys that come in that are relatively inexperienced that do really well usually fit into one or two camps. They're either really good footballers who just can't get a run of the like a Grant Savoury, for example, should not be playing in the Championship, but he just can't keep himself fit. So you've got that kind of drop off from the higher level, or you've got boys who are rapid, just can run all day, and they're no great, but they can run all day. And I'm not sure which camp he falls into, if I'm being totally honest. But I'm intrigued to see what he's like on Saturday because he looks all right.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be a tough test, given he's up against Paul Hanlon, who's got so much experience in Callum.
But he is rapid, though.
Yeah, well, again, time will tell. I was actually looking into the history for our games against Queen's Park, and the only times that we've actually beaten them since they've came back up or got into the Championship, both games they've had red cards, which is a bit of a peculiar stat, actually. There was a game where they were going for the league against Dundee, and I think it was Charlie Fox got sent off for a stamp, and then there was the game, the infamous start of Tizard getting sent off in that infamous sort of start of the Veldman collapse, shall we say. So if we see a red card for Queen's Park on Saturday, optimistic that'll be a good omen. But yeah. Scott, Queen's Park did have an identical almost League Cup to ourselves. They had a rather embarrassing 90th minute defeat to Spartans with 2 late goals scored against them. Picked up 2 wins and lost the remaining games, I believe. What are you expecting from them? Do you think even though it's sort of like a transitionary period, do you think it's with them, the squad that they've got, do you think it's still going to show, even the teams down the bottom are going to be tough this season? I know it's a bit of a cliche to say, like Davey asking the manager and he's coming back with all games are tough in this league, but do you think the cliche rings true?
I mean, I say it all the time as well. Like, it is the whole every team can beat everyone on any given Saturday in the Championship. It just is the case, and it always has been the case. certainly in the time that I've been watching Raith Rovers anyway, it's been the case. So I think why this season would be any different, I don't know. I know that obviously everybody's been talking about how it's kind of a two-horse race in terms of the title, with Ayr kind of on their own in that third sort of place. And then it's kind of... It keeps being spoken about this season that the championship is going to be split into like three sections. And it seems to be them three that I've mentioned are going to be the top three. Then it's like to us, Dunfermline, Partick, and Morton are going to be that middle section. And then it'll be the likes of Airdrie, Queen's Park, Arbroath down the bottom. But Queen's Park, I am intrigued to see them on Saturday, because from what I actually seen, I went and had a look back at their game against Falkirk, mainly to see, because that's the sort of closest standard to us that they would have played in their group. And from that game, they actually created plenty of chances and looked all right. So I was like, well, I'm not quite seeing, again, like, I mean, the League Cup, I never know how to take it, because like it's so many times that you see teams doing well in it and then they absolutely flop. I mean, look at last season. Clyde, for instance, done brilliant in the Premier Sports Cup, beat Partick away and everything, and then absolutely bombed League Two, and they were expected to walk League Two with how well they'd done. And then, I mean, look at Dunfermline even under Peter Grant. What did they? I think they never conceded a goal. They scored about 5 goals in every game, and they were talking about how they were going to walk the championship. Then they didn't win until like November or Christmas or something. So it's like and Partick seem to be that team this season as well. That everybody's talking up, saying how well they've done in the League Cup. I think you're going to have to wait until probably mid-September to start seeing how everybody's unfolding, because at that time everybody's done all their transfer business and everybody's set until January. So I think that's when it's going to be more time to judge teams. But in terms of, for Saturday in Queen's Park, I do think that Josh Fowler, that you've mentioned and spoke about already, I think him and Michael Roof are probably going to be two players that we're going to have to keep an eye on, especially with the back three that we've got, because they two have got pace to burn and they'll run all day. I mean, Michael Roof will just harry defenders constantly. He's not going to score you 15 goals a season. That might be what Josh Fowler's been brought in to do. So, like, it will be interesting to see how we deal with that sort of pace. I also, for the love of God, hope that Lewis Stevenson learns for last season in training, didn't he let Aidan Connolly cut inside? Like, we ken exactly how that ends a lot of the time at Starks Park.
Well, fingers crossed. We didn't see it often over the last couple of seasons, so hopefully that continues. And time will tell. But yeah, with regards to the League Cup, the one that stood out for me is Ross County and how poor they've been. I suspect that St Johnstone fans are probably licking their lips. But the question with them that I am asking at the moment is, how itchy does Roy McGregor's finger get in terms of that trigger in getting rid of Don Cowie? Because seemingly, I mentioned it on Twitter, and seemingly, apparently, it's a big thing that he's a local to them and that he's involved with the club. And yeah, I just, for me, Roy McGregor, I still always remember when they sacked Dick Campbell talking about a lack of style and panache, and they've certainly not got that with their start that they've had in the League Cup. Very, very poor. Ronan Hales came out. He's obviously said that he's looking to leave. He wants to make sure he's got the best opportunity in terms of going for Northern Ireland squads. So he'll be a big loss. And in terms of the signings that they have made, there's a lot in there where you're asking the likes of Gary Mackay-Steven, Ross Doherty, a lot of players that have had sort of injury worries in the past. They do have a lot of quality in there as well with the signings that they've bought. But I feel like the league, it's not as cut and dry as people are saying. And I feel like a club like Rovers in particular, I said it before, but I wonder if there's a little bit of sleeping on us in terms of the league and where we are. Because if we can get the likes of Jack Hamilton, I know it's a sort of $1 million question about, like, can you keep Lewis Swan fit? But the guy, if he does stay fit, pretty much guaranteed goals. He's just that type of player. He can just find something out of nothing. So, yeah, speaking of Rovers, let's turn our attention to them. Player 5-1 win last week. do you think it's inevitable that we're keeping the same team?
Yes.
Thank you.
That's about as... Actually, to be fair, he started Sean Byrne, so maybe not. I don't know. Honestly, at this point, I don't know. I'd hope he doesn't change it. I'd hope he kind of took a look at how we played, and like I think it's easy to look at that game on Saturday and go, they're League One or whatever. They're one of the teams that are one of the favourites for League One. I mean, starting with a 5-point deduction and still one of the favourites to win it. Do you know what I mean? So it's not like we were playing East Kilbride or whoever. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm not sure how much you can read into the League Cup anyway. And I know what you're saying about Ross County, but I mean, Jordan White, there you go. That's Ronan Hale's problem sorted. I just feel like there is a bit of a gulf this year. Scott was talking about the groups of 3 and stuff. Like, those top 3, they're going to bang goals in every week, I think. And I think that's where we've just got to kind of get our heads down and get on with getting on. And we cried out under previous managers for a bit of consistency. Couldn't get the same back 4 out every week. Couldn't play the same centre midfield 2 every week. Now we can. And now we almost certainly will. So if it was me personally, I'd go absolutely no changes. It worked. It was good. And I think we try and build on it, personally.
Yeah, it's natural. You see a 5-1 win and you're thinking, right, if we can just keep this going and we can get that sort of momentum and develop from it, then hopefully moving forward, we'll have a very positive start to the campaign. I mean, the last time that we started a campaign at home was the 21-22 season, but then even going back to before, it was back to 2020 was the last time I believe that we won on the opening day against Arbroath. So it's been a wee while, but hopeful of a positive start there. Scott, just to come back to you, Richard Chin obviously had a very eye-catching performance last weekend, shall we say. Barry Robson out in the Courier has an article sort of just trying to sort of making sure that people are keeping their feet on the ground, shall we say. Just flagging up, obviously, that he's still young, adjusting, and that we're sort of a bit in the dark compared to where we've brought him in from and how that compares to the standard that we're at. You weren't obviously on the post-match podcast. What were your thoughts on his performance? And do you think he could be in line for a start, or are you going to be keeping Paul McMullen in there?
Yeah, I totally can see where Robson's obviously coming from, because at the end of the day, the guy's actually still quite young in terms of in his career, but also he's new to the level and new to the club and to the area and stuff like that. So he'll still be taking time to settle in and get used to how Barry Robson's playing and how we want to play football. So I definitely am not getting carried away, but I will say I was very pleased with how he did impact the game on Saturday, because it could have been very easy for him to try and just go, oh, well, it's already 4-1. I've came on the park and just kind of eased through the game. But even I thought all the subs came on and made an impact on Saturday. And it actually shows that clearly they know they need to make an impact if they want in this team, because they know if you're in the team, there's a good chance you'll stay in the team. So, like, I think that's the way that players are going to start looking at it. But yeah, I don't necessarily see Richard Chin starting anytime soon. I think he could end up being a very good impact sub who can just run at defenders for the last 20, 15 minutes in games. And I mean, with the pace that he's already shown, he clearly likes to take players on, and he's got, obviously, he's that sort of bag of tricks that he's probably actually like more of a raw and pacey Dylan Easton in terms of that's the style of player that he seems to want to be, in terms of always looking to take players on. So I think it's definitely exciting with him and one to watch. But yeah, I think McMullen's more suited to how Barry Robson wants to play football, and I think that's exactly the reason why he went and got him, because it just seems to be that sort of... He just seems to rush defenders constantly and be in their faces, and he likes to get stuck in, and that's pretty much how likes of Finlay Pollock was used last season. I know that Finlay Pollock was used more as the sort of 9 or central forward, whereas McMullen's kind of been out on the right and cutting in and all that sort of stuff. So slightly different, but I do expect that there probably will only be one change going into Saturday, and it'll probably be Ross Matthews or Sean Byrne. Not that I agree with it, but it's I do think that it's likely that that'll happen because he was very quick to one of the subs being Sean Byrne off and Ross Matthews on Saturday. So I think it just seems to be the way that he's enjoying that sort of midfield too, even though we've noticed against decent sides that we might need that little bit extra cover in the middle of the park.
I don't know. I'm not so sure if he will be so quick to change it. I'm hoping that Sean Byrne will still be in there. I feel like if you've gone out and you've won your game so convincingly, and Sean Byrne really didn't put a foot wrong last Saturday, I'm still reasonably optimistic that he'll be in from the start. But
I'm hopeful I'll wake up tomorrow 6'2" and good looking, but I'm not feeling.
Blair, I'm hopeful as well. I'm hopeful as well. But aye, time will tell, and we'll see how it goes. Just for yourself, Blair, how important do you think it is to set? I mean, it's been a mixed League Cup campaign. I know you're saying don't look too much into the results, but just in terms of setting the tone with a potential victory for Rovers on Saturday, do you think that can be a big statement of intent really going into the league, or is it just very much game by game?
Honestly, it's that cliche of game by game. I think if there's one manager who's not going to come out and say that any game is a statement, it's Barry Robson. I think it is just you take each game as it comes. It's a really funny kind of time as well, this early first 3 or 4 games of the season, because as I was saying before, like the loan market's not really started moving yet. There's still signings getting made. So the Queen's Park we play on Saturday may not be the same Queen's Park, and we're already talking about Callum Ferry might or might not be there come the end of the window. We won't hopefully be exactly the same team come the end of August as well. So it's a weird kind of 3-4 weeks where you play your games and it's really just about taking each game one at a time, kind of doing the job, getting the business done, and just kind of looking after yourself. And then come the end of the first quarter, you kind of reflect and you see where you're at, and then you try and go again for the second quarter. The games are going to come thick and fast. That's the thing. Like Scott's already said it, every team can beat every team, and I genuinely think that will still be the case this year. I don't think there's going to be any easy games at all. So really excited to see where we kind of go with it. But for me, Saturday's just about a good performance first and foremost, and then hopefully a good result off the back of it, and getting some more minutes into some of the legs as well.
Yeah, for looking at the sort of first quarter of seasons, I always find it a bit funny that teams, they kind of get built up based around them. Like you look at Ayr last season, the season before that ourselves, everyone talks about like you start strong and then really depending on how it goes, you can base your success for the season. But nobody does that with tail end of seasons. Nobody looks at the tail end of a season and you end it strongly and then maybe you fall just short. And then people don't really flag it up. It's a very weird thing. Ayr in particular last season, a lot of comments getting made and a lot of expectation placed on them, but they did tail off quite heavily towards the end of the season. They've made some good additions, but
they've signed really well.
I would say
really
so,
well.
I think it's been mentioned before, but I think the last few signings in particular, Dom Thomas and Kevin Holt coming through, along with Bannigan, I think Bannigan is a good signing for them.
I think the idea that they're going to be kind of sniffing around the other two and picking up scraps, I'm not convinced. I actually think they're going to do really well this year. They've just got goals in them. They've got goals all over the place, and goals will win you this league. Like you can, we almost did it. We almost did it, conceding 2 every week and scoring 3. Like you can do it, and I kind of feel like that's how we set them up. But time will tell you.
The $1 million question is how strong Anton Dowds comes back, because he's still on his way back to fitness. But Yeah, and how many penalties he gets as well. Yeah,
I don't think we're really in a position.
I know we're not. It's great, but I'm still going to do it anyway. So
with no sound effects, though, so it's fine.
That's all right. And Scott, just to come back to you, just what are your hopes for this season? What are you sort of hoping that we'll see from Rovers in terms of going ahead for this campaign?
Well, as I said right back at the start of the episode, if you're not going to be optimistic now, then when are you going to be optimistic in the season when we've not even kicked a ball yet in terms of the league campaign and everybody's on 0 points, everybody's tied first? Like, I think
relegation battle as well.
I think I don't see us being in anywhere near in the talk of like a title race or anything like that. I think they two are certainly going to. They look to be a cut above, and the fact that when it gets to January, the two of them will have their parachute payments, and they'll just dip into the market and take whatever player that they need to go and sort of make just get that extra sort of gap between everybody else, and also to bridge themselves closer to each other. Because if they two are going to be going hammer and tongs all season at it, then the two of them will be fighting for the same players likely, going for that title. So I do. Part of me is almost hoping that Ayr don't live up to the hype that they're kind of
all of me is hoping.
One of my good mates over here that's also a greenkeeper out in Holland, he's an Ayr United fan, and he's almost feeling uncomfortable at how confident their fan base and their club are being, because he's like, I can't remember the fans ever being this confident going into a championship season. And I mean, I think it's fair enough to be going in so confident when they're banging in so many goals. They've signed really well, as Blair touched on as well.
Yeah,
I mean, Dom Thomas, very good at this level of football. Kevin Holt won the league with Dundee United, done well at Partick and Dundee and all these clubs as well. So I don't, and they've been paying like transfer fees for some of these guys as well. So they're clearly trying to be as close to the top two as possible. It's whether we can, with this thin squad that we keep talking about, whether we can keep pace with that. I think on any given day, there's a chance that we will pick up points against this lot, because at the same time last season, we picked up points against Falkirk, we picked up points against Livy. It was actually down at the bottom against like City Hergé that we struggled against. So I think, but for the season ahead, I think I wrote down like a 1 to 10 of what I think the league could finish, and I had us down for 4th. Now, as I say, I think it could end up being the Ayr don't live up to the hype, and we could potentially get into 3rd. But the big caveat is, and we've touched on it already, is the whole we need everybody to be fit more often than not if we're going to be in with a shot for playoffs, for promotion playoffs this season. If we get a lot of injuries, or if we get injuries to key guys in key positions, I will then start to worry that it could end up being one of these seasons where you're going into the final 4 games of the season and you're in that sort of desert where you can't go anywhere, sort of thing. Like kind of what Morton find themselves in most seasons. So, yeah. But I'll say that right now, I fancy us to try and definitely battle for that sort of last promotion playoffs spot.
And for you, Blair, where about your optimism levels?
I'm much the same, actually, although probably slightly lower than Scott. I think ideally, I think if I was, looking for the kind of season I'm hoping we can have, comfortable top 4 would be great. Like, not scraping it the last couple of weeks of the season or whatever, but like Scott says, maybe challenging for 3rd or whatever, and finishing 4th or finishing 3rd. Because, I mean, ultimately, finishing 3rd or 4th playoffs-wise makes no difference anyway. It just doesn't. Like, you're in the semi-finals, the quarterfinals, regardless. So you're going to have to play all the way through. I'm actually really looking forward to the derbies. For the first time in a good couple of years, like 2 seasons ago, we were looking forward to the derbies because they were guff and we totally had their number and it was hilarious. Like the cartoons and all that, like it was just that season I don't think it'll ever be matched. Beating them 5 times in a season and drawn with them once. It was incredible. But Neil Lennon, it's going to be so good. I cannot wait to see him just being so obnoxious, it's not even funny, and just being a really horrible wee guy, and some of our fans losing the run of themselves at him, and it's just going to be, honestly, it's going to be like a pantomime this season, I think.
It's
I
going
think
to be
that's the thing I'm looking forward to most.
The sideline for the derbies and all. Robson and Lennon.
Oh, I know. It's going to be glorious. It really is. It's going to be absolutely
any
brilliant.
fourth official it's going to be between them, by the way.
You didn't fancy it. But yeah, it's just one. I think it's going to be one of those seasons. There's a wee bit. I was going to say I feel sorry for Ayr. I never feel sorry for Ayr. But in terms of the timing for them, they're obviously at a stage where they've got a manager he's well known and he's got a good reputation in the game, and he's going to be talked about any time that there's a big job comes up or whatever. And I don't think it's a secret that he's keen to move to a bigger opportunity if the opportunity comes. So they kind of almost, I'm not saying they have to spend to keep him, but there is that kind of feeling about the place, like he's got a slight expectation in terms of the way that the board need to support him and whatever. But they've picked a season when there's 2 teams come down for the Premier League with big squads and hundreds of money, and they're just going to keep chucking money at it. Like Scott says, we get to January, Ayr might be able to dip in and get 1 or 2. Ross County and St Johnstone will definitely be able to dip in and get 1 or 2. So they've picked a really tough season to have a right go at it. And I do think it's one of those seasons for us where I can't remember the last time I looked at the league and there were 3 really good favourites almost, if you like, for the league. And we're not in that. We've got to be really honest, we're not in that. If we manage to get into that, great. But I think we've just got to, like I said earlier, just go about our business and do what we do and see where it takes us. But yeah, derbies. That's basically what I'm looking forward to this season.
With Dunfermline, I feel like there's been a lot of hype and a lot of bluster behind them, and they've made some solid signings. I think in particular the lad Amadi just came over from Bulgaria, one of James Board's other teams. Convenient that he decides to come across to one of his other clubs. He, again, played at the Bundesliga. He's played in Belgium, got a really good track record. But yeah, I can understand why you're looking forward to those games a lot. I think there's going to be a lot of needle in them. A lot of focus, and it'll be good to have them back at that point of the year as well.
It'll be good to get the crowds back as well, because that's the other thing. As they started to get worse and worse, and then Tidser came in and all of that guff, the crowds went down. And a derby with no crowds, it's just not the same.
The last game at Starks in particular was very embarrassing for them in terms of what came along. But you can't blame them because they were staring down the barrel of a relegation. So with the new season up ahead, I think it's a tough one for me because we've really not got Callum Smith's the only player injured at the moment. So you're looking at the squad and it's all very much fully optimistic, very keen at the moment, but you know that over the course of the season that's going to change, and there are going to
give
be
it a week.
And how we could come out of the Queen's Park game and a couple of players have taken knocks, and all of a sudden you're sitting there saying, "We need to get bodies in. What's going on?" And I know that I'm fully aware that there are other people sitting there right now saying, "Why are we no signing players? We must be skint." That was Rory's other takeaway, as I said earlier on. That's not the case. We just want the right players to be going ahead with, being very patient and sort of pragmatic with our business. I'm hopeful that we'll get the top 4, and anything better than that, again, I'm sure the players will be looking there and they'll feel that they can beat any team on their day. So time will tell. Particularly, I know that, of course, the caveat that the League Cup isn't a good barometer, but with County starting so poorly, Thistle are going to be a real wild card in there as well. It's hard to say. Again, they've not got as much depth as probably before, so time will tell. Going ahead into Saturday, Blair, Prediction League is arrived.
Yep, the Prediction League. So basically, for anybody who's not familiar with it, where have you been? But otherwise, it's the same format as last year. There will be 2 games every week. One is the Rovers, and one will be another game. I'm going to try and avoid the Friday night games. Every time I did it on a Friday night, I got a wheen of folk just no enter because they'd forgotten to do it before the Friday. So I'm going to probably stick to the Saturdays as much as possible, unless we're playing on a Friday. Obviously, that kind of ties my hand a little bit. But yeah, 2 games a week. It's basically pick the winner and pick whether or not it's a both teams to score, and we'll have a wee running league table like we did last year. It was pretty well played last year, actually, to be fair. I think there was a good 50 or 60 that kind of played pretty much every week. Started off, I think the peak was like 100 and something, and then it, as everything does, it dwindled away a little bit. But it's a good laugh, and we'll try and figure out some chin-related merchandise that we can have for the winner.
I, for one, will be trying to keep more keen eyes in terms of my predictions, because there was a good few that I missed off last year. Easy excuse to get in, but yeah,
even I did.
A suitably mediocre performance from myself, ending up in a mid-table obscurity. So yeah, try and avoid that. Right, let's have a game of Should McStay or Should Dargo, as we usually do with pre-matches. So 6 clues about a former or current Rovers player. As Blair grimaces. Right, clue number 1. I have played for 9 teams in my career in England and Scotland.
Is this Berwick again?
No.
8 Scottish and Berwick. Classic.
We're agreed that Berwick are in Scotland.
Berwick are in Scotland.
Good. So played in England and Scotland and played 9 teams.
Yes.
Rules like Liam Buchanan. Aidan Connolly. Just because it's nice to talk about him. As I said to him in the urinal at the Player of the Year dance, I'm going to feel terrible booing him. I really am. I love the guy.
Who to go for?
I don't even know if he'd have had 9 teams, would he?
I don't know, he must be about that number.
Well, probably, wow, yeah. 9 might be just too much, but he's played for a few.
He's played in England, though, hasn't he? That's the...
Yep.
Aye, well, that's the thing. It's you're just trying to remember to make sure you've got somebody that's played in England, but I'm trying to get anybody. I always tend to, like, at the start just go for like somebody that either currently plays for us or like has recently played for us. I'll just go for somebody a bit more rogue. Again, Christ, it's that long ago I couldn't tell you how many teams he's played for or like where he's played. But Andy Todd.
Andy Todd. Clue 2. I made my professional debut in a game featuring one former Rover, one current Rover, and one of our coaching staff on my side.
Sorry, one of our coaching staff?
Yes, one of our coaching staff on my side. So that would be in the team that day.
Feels like John Potter's got to be the coaching staff. We're already just going to have to work together, Scott.
Current player, current coaching staff, and what was the other part?
One former player.
Okay.
So it could be Dunfermline.
It could be Andy Kirk they've played with.
It could be, actually.
Well, good to play with Barry Robson, I know, but I just... Andy, well, I mean,
have
Andy
any of them
Clark
played with a
far
current player? I don't think any of them have. So they would have also had to play with one of the current squad. And I don't think either manager or assistant manager.
I was going to say, if it's anything to do with age-wise, you've probably got to look at somebody like a Hanlon or a Stevenson, but then they've got to have played for Hibs.
See, this could be the little loophole, though, because John Potter, when he was at Dunfermline, so was Sean Byrne. So they definitely played together.
Yeah.
Not for long, but they definitely played together. And so did Aidan Connolly.
Did Callum Fordyce also play with him?
Yes.
He would have done, aye.
Because he was really young when he was at Dunfermline, I think.
He would have
was
done.
at Dunfermline and then he went
would Andy Kirk have been at that point there?
But only one former Rover.
Yes.
See, that squad would have had...
Christ knows who the former player's going to be. Like, that could be anybody, but like...
I'm trying to think, if it's that Dunfermline squad, you'd have Potter. You'd have Byrne or Fordyce, potentially. Then maybe like a Wedderburn? But then would you not have a Cardle?
Nah, Wedderburn was definitely a lot later at Dunfermline than that.
I'm going to stick with Aidan Connolly.
Cool.
I'm not convinced it's him because I don't think he's played for 9 clubs.
Well, the other thing with that is, I think I'm getting confused with this already. If it was going to be somebody like Sean Byrne or something, he's never played in England, I don't think.
No. But it can't be Sean Byrne. Well, I suppose it could be. But this player,
because he's not played in England. But
no, but the clue is that this player made their formal debut in the same team as one former player, one current player, and one member of the coaching staff. So the only link I can see is that one of our coaching staff has to have played Robbie Thompson.
Yeah.
That could scupper things.
And what's he?
I was going straight to John Potter.
Well, again, he's never played in England, I don't think.
No, it's not that. You've got to try and figure out a player in our current squad who has played alongside one of our current coaching staff. Now, if we kind of ignore Robbie Thompson for a second, because that's the big red herring, if it's John Potter, it has to be Dunfermline, because the current player would be either Sean Byrne or Callum Fordyce. So it would be somebody who made their debut in that Dunfermline team.
Yeah.
So
and has played for us.
The former Rover, the current Rover, and the coaching staff don't have had to have played in England. It's only the player, the Dargo Victor.
The player in question.
I'm just going to skip for this one. Go to the next one.
We'll just keep you on Andy Todd. Clue number 3. I am a defender.
Oh, it's not fucking Aidan Connolly then, is it?
So it's a defender that's played for 9 teams in their career across England and Scotland. And when they made their professional debut, it was in a game featuring a former Rover, a current Rover, and one of our coaching staff on their squad.
Made me wonder if it is Robbie Thompson.
I'm
either really close or I'm a million miles away.
The only other person that I did think of before he mentioned the defender was actually Joe Cardle.
Yeah.
But now with the defender clue, I'm not sure who it could be. But we're pretty certain, or we seem pretty set on, that this guy's probably played for Dunfermline at some point.
I think so.
Well,
I think it has to be.
I mean, the fact that 2 of our coaching staff played for them, like, it's a high possibility that they've played. I mean, where else? I
suppose they could have played, but none of our current squad. But none of our current squad have played with. Well, any of them played with Andy Kirk?
Well, he played. Was he at Hearts?
Andy Kirk was at Hearts, but that was like 2001.
Way early. Whereas Potter came back to Dunfermline 2010, 2011.
Aye, end of his career.
I just feel it has to be that. That's what I'm saying. I'm either really stinkingly close, or I am a million miles away. But I think if I can figure out somebody who's played as a defender, played for us, and played for Dunfermline, and played with Sean Byrne or Callum Fordyce. Has Callum Fordyce played in England? No, he hasn't, has he?
No. I'm ignoring some of the clues, even just with some of my guesses, just to try and think of players. I mean, another player, but again, I don't know if it's just
Jason Thompson.
Jason Thompson.
He was on loan at Dunfermline. Would have been about that time.
Has he played in England?
Oh, fuck. Forgot about that.
I'm saying, like, that, it's just one part of the clue every time that's like, I'm not sure. Like, because I was starting to think of somebody like, but again, because we're so certain that this guy's played for the Pars, I was like, well, it can't be him, but because I was like, oh, let's go with an old favourite of Blair's at the start, like Eddie Malone or something. Because he would have played back then.
I miss guessing him every round.
But at the same time, what current Rover would he have probably played with? Other than, I suppose, one of these sort of older guys that we've got. Because what year did he play for us again? Like 2011?
Would have been about 2011, 2000,
yeah.
Well, maybe 12, 13-ish.
So none of the current squad, none of the lads that have stuck around at the Rovers for ages were even in the first team by that point. So, like, it's going to be none of them. I suppose you could look at somebody like has he maybe had a loan spell or a spell at a club where he's been at the same club as Sean Byrne or whatever.
See, I remember doing a Should McStay or Should Dar Go, and it was Gozi Ugwu, and I tried to get in. Basically, the clue was around having played with Andrew Barrowman, having played with John Potter, and having played with Sean Byrne and Aidan Connolly at that time actually as well. But
would you like clue 4?
Oh, hang on. Nah, go clue 4. I think I've got an idea, but I'll hold my wine.
I've featured for both Raith and Queen's Park.
Ross Millen.
Ross Millen.
Ross Millen was at Dunfermline.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if it'd be about the same time.
It was a while ago. He was at
England. He's played for Queen's Park.
I think Millen was in that same team as Callum Fordyce at Dunfermline.
Yeah, possibly.
Right, I'm going to put you out your misery because clue 5 was both my dad and I are former Rovers, and clue 6 was
yes.
Panenka redacted. So yes, you're absolutely
He who shall not be named.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct in terms of the deduction there and the way that you went about it. So yeah, the former Rover was Joe Cardle. The current Rover is Sean Byrne, who was also in the under-20s at that point. Did
he play with both Kirk and Potter?
Andy Kirk was the player who's now on the coaching staff. And actually, I did look into it because I didn't realise it. But I went and did a wee Google search while you were guessing away. John Potter was the manager that gave him his debut.
All right, okay.
Aye, so
there you go.
A real mix in there in terms of that. But yeah, well,
wasn't he playing at that point?
No.
I'm surprised actually that Fordyce isn't in that Dunfermline team with Millen and that.
I mean, I need to go back and double check, but I'm sure I would have picked up on that. But aye,
9 clubs.
Aye, so he's been down south to Scunthorpe and obviously
definitely been in England a few times.
Morecambe, Dunfermline, Kelly, Queen's Park, ourselves, Cali Thistle. Just been about the clubs, hasn't he, Ross Millen?
Yeah.
It was easy considering the club forgot about him.
What a wild time, eh? Just going for a title race and then just all these stories about laptops getting left out and nonsense like that.
No.
A very, very funny.
For the 18 months that he was actually playing in the team for us, I think he actually done us a decent turn, to be fair, and actually gave us some pretty big performances. However, I would like a defender that would like to header the ball, and that boy refused to header the ball.
That would be nice.
I'd
love to know as well, now that Murray's gone, I'd love somebody to come out and tell us what actually happened. And I know they never will, but I'd love to know I've heard so many versions of the story from folk who definitely know what happened, and you get a different version every time. But I'd love to know exactly what happened with that.
It's always the same when a player leaves a club under those like circumstances, isn't it? It's just it turns out
Yeah.
like the most wild of rumours. But it's
Panenka.
Oh,
Man, that was
every
so
time
good.
I go to Hampton, I'm like, that's Ross Milne. That's what I call it.
Like that moment when he
slide tackle
won
at
that tackle
Tannadice.
at Tannadice. I mean, it was
Stands up,
it was
celebrates.
celebration after it. You're just like, you think you just scored a 40-yarder or something.
The game was still going on. That was the funny thing. I'm just looking at that Dunfermline squad, and a real mishmash of it, and sort of Sean Byrne, John Potter.
What year was that? That'd be about 2011, 2012?
Yeah, it was 2012. He made his first team debut, I think, against Accies in the Scottish Cup. Some real bizarre. Lauren Shankland was on loan from Aberdeen. Craig Dargo, funnily enough. Josh Falkingham, Faisal Baktouti, Andy Geoghegan, Danny Granger was there. Ross Forbes.
No, actually, that might be a season later. It sounds like the same sort of team, because if Josh Falkingham was there when he absolutely halved Eddie Malone in the first 30 seconds of the game.
Yeah. But, yeah, let's talk about those miscreants. And, I mean, there's a few good guys in there. We'll accept the likes of Potsy and Ross Milne. But other than that, just a bunch of wrong ones. Anyway, we will be back, of course, after the Queen's Park game with a full debrief on the match. Thank you for taking the time to listen. Continue to not hit that unsubscribe button, even though I've botched about 15 different parts of this episode. But yeah, we will be back. So thank you for taking the time to listen. And as ever, bye for now.